We all are scared of AI, right?
I'm not scared. I'm very much optimistic.
Concern?
Concern is always there.
Let's for the fun, let's take a scenario where everything under the sun is done by AI. If no human has money to buy anything, why you need the investment in AI?
What is the kind of mindset change that they need to have in transitioning, let's say, from a programmer into an architect?
And you look in an essence, right, what is architect is, it's a junction where both business and technology merges, right? I don't know why people don't like people management. Technology is easy to manage, people are not. If you are in a room and if you are an architect, you end up looking at somebody else to take a decision. That's a disaster for me, right? Not knowing the technology is not an option anymore. Even pure engineering managers must know the architecture, because then you can appreciate the challenges which your developers are going through.
Hi, Abhay.
Right.
It's a pleasure hosting you. I've known you for a bit, maybe around 3 years. It was not purely a professional relationship.
True.
Because you're carrying a lot of wealth of your knowledge. Plus, I think that will also help somebody who's maybe starting up in their journey of
Sure.
on the let's say on the technical side, I would call it. And I think your kind of knowledge will help them in transitioning towards a journey which will be more technical into the architecture world, maybe, right? So that's how this will be structured. The whole discussion will be maybe to start with your journey. How did you start? And then we will go into the new relevant things which is really happening, which is on AI, how it is disrupting.
Sure.
Has it really gotten anything to do with disrupting, let's say, the architecture world? And finally, we will conclude maybe with some kind of guidance which you can share for everyone who's aspiring right now, because times are really tough. Whatever I see, things are really disrupting. So with that, maybe let's just start with your introduction.
First of all, thanks for having me here, Vish.
Pleasure.
Getting your invitation was really unexpected. I was not expecting it, but thanks. And if anything from me can add value to someone's career or profession, I'll be very happy.
It has changed my perspective of how to look at even architecture, right? So I think somewhere you have also helped me in transitioning myself.
Then I'm really happy, but thanks for having me.
Yep. So I know your journey was completely maybe starting with architecture. Somewhere you would have transitioned into that role, right? Have you realized it, or it just happened? How did you transition?
So let me start with my journey, right? I mean, and I will tell you a long story. Okay. I graduated in 1999. So it's now what, little over a quarter of a century since I'm working. Okay. I come from the generation that worked on Y2K problem. I experienced the emergence of web.
Yep.
And then .com bubble burst. So that's how my earlier days were. Okay. I'm alumni of Nagpur University. Symbiosis Pune. I'm Bangalore and Fraunhofer University in Germany. So I've been to quite good number of colleges to understand the technology and the.
You studied in Germany?
I went there as an exchange student.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Okay.
And then other thing is that when I started as a software developer, a coder, right? And through my journey, I was introduced to product management. So a significant part of my...
Even before that, if I can interrupt, how did you even get into tech? What prompted you? Or was it just our generational thing that tech is the future, you need to be an engineer? Was that the same case?
No, I never wanted to be an engineer, right? Okay. Or never had any plans of doing engineering or something else. All that I remember now is during my high school days and late 80s, 89, 88, I saw this box in the school and I said, I want to do a work on this. I want to do something related to this box, which was a computer, color screen with a lot of keys on the keyboard, right? And if I had not been an engineer, I would have done BCA or MCA or something to do with the computers.
Okay.
And that, as you said, right, it's a generational thing that since you acquired that knowledge, you ventured into the technology space. but I like the computers, or I love the computers the day I saw them, right? So that's how it started. And after college, I think a few small companies in Ahmedabad, in my hometown, that's where I started. And I didn't realize when I moved from just coding to hardcore technology companies, right? It just happened.
So architecture just was within you, then you did not even realize you had the skill set to start with.
As I said, right, there are two parts. One is I started as a developer or a coder, and there was second part where I was introduced to product management, where I first learned about what is market segment, what is customer requirements, what's a roadmap, etc. And you look in an essence, right, what is architect is it kind of it's a junction where both business and technology merges, right? You need to understand more about customer, but also need to have a strong technical background. And I think it also happened naturally that I moved from engineering to architecture.
Okay, that's an interesting take on how you transition, because normally what I have seen is, let's say, even recently, anybody wanting to or aspiring to be an architect, first part is then it comes like, I don't want to be on the people management side. That's the reason I want to be an architect. There's no clear cut, let's say, vision where they evolve from this. That could be a problem, because in India you don't have somebody like a principal engineer who's growing in the same direction of, let's say, only coding. But
Yes.
if they don't want to be with people, they want to be with maybe on the architecture side. That, but your take is totally different from what I have seen. Do you also see the same, that there is a gap in terms of how people are transitioning?
So there's one thing that people often gets confused between the title and the role. Okay, role is one part
Yeah.
where you are doing something day in day out, and the other thing is title, right? You can be a principal engineer, you can be an architect, or you can be a director, or a lead developer, right? But what are you doing essentially, right? Even developers do design a module, right? Even architecting a module, right? That's not so hard to find. But I think if not people management, be strong on on the technical side, right? And I don't know why people don't like people management, but I think it's an interesting aspect. Technology is easy to manage, people are not.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, I think you know this better than me, but I think engineers have to realize that what value they can add after certain years of experience, right? If someone thinks that he or she can code endlessly till the retirement, it happens in the West.
Yeah.
I know people who are coding for 30-35 years, 12 hours a day. And it also depends on where you are, what kind of organization, what kind of business you are in, right? So it's a difficult answer, right? But yeah, you can code endlessly, or you can manage people, but there are other streams as well. There are technical program managers, there are program managers. The role of a program manager has evolved a lot in recent times. There's this role of product management
Yeah.
where companies want product managers to be technically very strong, right? So it's not that if you don't want to do people management, architecture is the only choice. You have a lot of choice in your bucket. You can pick any of them.
But are engineers really aware? Because when I was maybe uh, coding in my past, when I was maybe an engineer, transition was again towards any of these two, right? You become a tech lead, then
Yeah.
your journey either has to be this or there. But I think these new branches are maybe clearly coming out, let's say, saying somebody who has to be a product manager too, who has to be technical, right? I think these are something which are maybe recent evolutions, maybe, if I'm not wrong. Or was it always there?
Product management was always there, at least when I started my career. I can talk of at least 20-25 years back. I have
But
seen product
engineers
managers.
aspiring to be a product manager?
Exactly. So product managers that I came across early stage in my career were largely from business background,
Yeah.
right? They would try and understand a business problem and bring it to the table for engineers to code a solution, right? The challenge there was their understanding. There was a void in terms of their technical understanding. And as technology becomes more and more mature, right, more and more sophisticated, you just cannot have a product manager who can write user stories or define market segments, right? And that's where I think, yes, it is evolving, and the need to understand technology is becoming much more greater, because you just cannot be ignorant of technology. Yeah.
And yeah, once we enter into the second section of where the new evolution is happening, I think it will be pretty more evident, I feel.
Sure.
Yep. We'll not enter there yet, but what I'm saying is, let's say if somebody wants to transition in right now, what is the kind of mindset change that they need to have in transitioning, let's say, from a programmer into an architect? Do they really need it?
I think yes, there's a definitely a lot of difference between a coder and an architect, right? And I can tell you about my experience. I can tell you about the experience of the people whom I work with, right? At top of my mind, I can think of two options, two things, right? One is the shift in mind shift is that you should be thinking more holistically, right? So, as a software engineer, I was thinking about the libraries and codes and solid principles, etc., right? And then what services to use, etc., right? When you become an architect, right, fundamentally you should start thinking about topics which are beyond engineering, right? For example, what are the solutions that I'm going to, who are the consumers of the solutions I'm going to design, right? What are the other solutions with which my solutions will interact, right? So you talk about ecosystem where your solution is working, you talk about cost of the solution, you talk about the complexity of building and supporting the solution, right? All these aspects comes in. So you have to start thinking not just from the point of view, technical point of view, but also
the programming point of like what my code does is what mostly engineers do.
But then how are you going to support this solution? How are you going to integrate this solution with other aspects? Is this design cost effective? Because developers would not really worry too much about cost, right? But then as an architect, you should see what is the short term and long term implications on cost, right? So your thinking has to evolve, and it has to be much more holistic. That's the first mindset change, that you cannot say that I'm not responsible for maintenance of the product. No, you're designing, you have to see the maintenance is easy, right? And the second big difference in the thought process, I would say, is your ability to make decisions. Okay, if you are in a room and if you are an architect and you end up looking at somebody else to take a decision, no, that's a disaster for me, right? For any technical discussions that happens, there are pros and cons, right? There are short-term benefits and long-term benefits of every decision that you make, and you and I can endlessly discuss on these options, which way we should go. But you're in a room who should be convinced first. You are in the room who will take that decision, that hard call. Okay, I take the risk, but we take this decision that we are going with option B or C or D, right? So in the mindset, you have to be sure that you will not look in the room at somebody else to take the decision. It's you who will take the decision, right? And it is a lot of risk in taking decisions, because it can go wrong and you will be the first person under the fire. But mentally be prepared for that. So I would say mentally, one is holistic thinking beyond technical. Second is be ready to take decisions. Those are the two mindset shifts, I think, from an engineer to architect position.
And I think somewhere, again, every engineer is going through, let's say, a grooming journey too. Somebody is there as a mentor who's grooming. Mostly it is going to be a technical lead or even an engineering manager, right? So what is that trait? Or the other part is like, does an engineering manager also is somebody who needs to understand how architecture works completely, so that he can groom? How does that grooming journey start for an engineer?
I think we are stepping into into a situation where, be it engineering manager or be it a tech lead, they better understand the architecture, right? Not knowing the technology is not an option anymore, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Even pure engineering managers must know the architecture, because then you can appreciate the challenges which your developers are going through.
Yeah,
Right.
why I bring this topic is because most of the time what I see is the engineering manager is more in the sidelines looking at, let's say the architecture decisions are going to come from somewhere. Somewhere I feel that ownership also does not fall on them.
Okay.
How is that again the expectation also that let's say an engineer is also groomed by or even mentored by even these engineering managers, right? So how do they make sure that their journey is in the right direction? If let's say they identify, first part is even identification. How will an engineering manager even identify this is the person who's the right fit, maybe into groom into this direction, right? So do you feel that is a gap, or how do we enable even an engineering manager to understand the right traits?
Okay, let's first understand what is engineering manager doing, right? So, is resource allocation part of engineering
Yes,
manager's
majorly,
responsibility?
majorly,
Right.
yes.
How do I allocate a resource to a specific task if I don't understand the complexity of the task?
Yeah.
If I don't know the strength of my engineers, right? So to put the right person in the right place is engineering manager's responsibility. And if this manager doesn't understand the architecture, or if he doesn't understand the strengths and weakness of his team member, then I think there's a serious problem. Knowing anything is helpful, right? Everything, right, for that matter, right? But engineering manager, I believe, should and must know the architecture, and that will help him make the right decision in putting the right person in the right place. Okay. He also knows then what are the risks he's taking by putting this person in this place, so he can also plan for mitigation. So answering that part, that yes, engineering manager must be aware of architectural designs, or goals, as we call it, right? What are the architectural goals, right?
It's more awareness,
It's
like what's
awareness,
really
yeah.
going on, what is really required.
Exactly. It is not that you have to be at the same level as architect is,
Yeah.
but yeah, you should be aware of it. You cannot treat it as a black box,
Yeah.
right?
So it comes under the T model or the T-shaped skill set where.
Right.
Okay.
The second part was, how do you judge if a talent is someone whom you can groom, right? As I said, the holistic thinking is very important. The holistic approach to a problem solving is very important, right? What are we doing as architects? We are designing solutions, or we are solving problems, right? And you do it good. You do a good job when you ask right set of questions. So when you meet an engineer, a young person who's asking those right questions, right? Why this? Why not that, right? And what happens if I do this? How will we deploy this? If we do this, there's a challenge in deployment, the support cost becomes higher. I think if you see someone who asks such questions, or who's thinking on those lines, then I think you're you are in a right direction. You're very close to identifying the potential architect for mentoring, right? And that urge, right? I mean, that urge to know more, learn more, has to be there, right? So I think a person who is involved in such discussions, right? You should definitely look at him or her to mentor to become an architect.
Okay. And you've been an architect most of your, I won't say life, yeah, but your career, life, if I can call this, you would have brought in a lot of credibility on the table for yourself,
Yeah.
and people trust you with a lot of architectural decision making, right? And I also seen that when Abhay is maybe bringing something to the table, everyone really trusts this is the right solution, and then there are not much debates which happens. How did you bring at least grow the credibility which is required, and what should somebody look at if let's say they have to grow in that same direction?
Yeah, I think bringing trust, right? Credibility. mm, it doesn't happen overnight,
Yeah.
right? We need to spend a lot more time um, with the product and with the people whom we work, right? And how will people start trusting you, or how will you bring in more credibility? So one of the thing is that when you stay longer with the product, you take decisions, right? And decisions that you make will see some result, right? And the results of your decisions is what people will see you uh, from that lens, right? And your decisions gets reflected. The results of your decisions will be reflected in the product development cycle. So when engineers are coding, when testers are testing, when you are deploying it, okay, when you're supporting this product, right, when user adaptation comes in, are users liking it or not, right, your functional and non-functional aspects comes in, right? So I would say long-term implications of decisions that you take uh, would be visible across the product development life cycle and product life cycle. And how do you build more credibility? By taking decisions which make life easy for a developer, for a support staff, for a tester, or for operation staff, right? And that becomes very important. And that is when people say, yes, we did not experience this problem because this was a right decision, right? I will just deviate a little bit, okay? And I think we used to take a lot of interviews in past, and I
Yeah.
still take a lot of interviews. And when it comes to senior people, right, 12, 15 years, and when I see a CV and I see a person has not stayed with the product for long enough, I don't consider him or her, right? For me, it is very important that you stay with the product for long to see the outcome of decisions that you have taken, okay? Uh, and if someone says, how long should I stay with the product? Then I say it's simple. You should have experienced multiple cycles of product development and product life cycle, right? So how many product development life cycles have you gone through? Which is right from ideation till launch of a product, right? Development or implementation, validation, right? Beta launch and then launch, right? And how many product life cycles you have seen, which means after launch, customer adaptation has increased. It has gone to a maturity phase and then end of life, right? If a person has not seen this, right, it's very difficult that he understands the implication of decision he or she
Yeah.
is making. It's a complex answer, but
Yeah.
I would say stay longer with the product, stay longer with the product life cycle, and observe the outcome of your decision at each phase of product development life cycle and product life cycle. And then you bring in the experience, and the people starts trusting you because you have built some amount of credibility.
Yeah, I think it's not just about understanding the domain. It is more staying longer with the product,
Exactly.
understanding its journey, its ups and downs, its maturity. Along with that, you're also
Exactly.
maturing, right? Which, yeah, I think some of this younger generation, I don't know whether it is relevant for the past generation too, but yeah, I see them jumping around, shifting careers sooner.
It's absolutely fine, right? It's your life, your career, your decision, right? But then don't expect responsibilities like this on
Yeah.
your journey, right?
The trust credibility
Trust,
part is
credibility
where,
will always be questioned,
yeah.
right?
Yeah, that's a good answer actually. To look back and think around how it maybe I would have created credibility around. But yeah, it really makes sense that
Yeah.
journey has to be in this way. So another question again for somebody who's just starting their journey towards being an architect. How is that career path going to look like in the long run? Let's say if they have spent a career like you, right? What can they see transitioning into different ones?
I think it should be the other way. Uh, you should shape your career based on what you want to become, right? The question that if I'm architect today, what will I eventually become? Maybe a few years down the line. I think I don't look at that way. Okay, you work towards your goal, and yes, architects work at different. Conventionally, we work at different levels. So, if you look 5, 10 years back, there were architects who will only design modules, and at highest level, you have enterprise architects, right?
Yeah.
So from enterprise architect, there's a next level. I think is solution architect, then system, and then module. Right? You can see it as a vertical growth, or you can grow horizontally. But I would say, what will you become after X years? It's up to you what you want to become, right? Rather than just deciding where the road takes you, you choose the road which takes to you towards your goal, right? So yes, you can become VP engineering, or you can become CTO, or I don't know what else, but it should be your goal, right?
Was that the same with you too, that you never looked at what you wanted to be, but it was more aligning towards?
I think for me, as I said, first, since I came from a background where I had experience in both engineering and product management, I had a natural liking towards defining solutions or architecting, right? That's how I look at, right? And then now I see one has to find what is the expertise I have developed over the years. What is that someone or the market values in me? Okay. And quite often you will see that your value is truly identified by someone else.
Yeah.
Okay. And the best thing that can happen to you and happened to me was someone calling me and asking me, are you the one who did that? I said yes. Okay, we may have a position for you if you're interested. And then you think that you are getting recognized for the work you have done, not just because you are having X number of years of experience, right? So that is how it happened with me. And when someone values me, and I typically go to a place where I'm more needed than where I'm in a comfort zone.
Yeah.
That's my philosophy of selecting the company.
Yeah,
where I want to
even
work.
makes complete sense, because somewhere around last year end, I was traveling, and then somebody ended up, a junior engineer, he ended up asking me. I had never thought of it, but then suddenly he came and asked, what do I need to do to be a CTO now? Or at least in a journey like you are taking, right? I had never imagined myself reaching there ever, because I was more looking at what I need to do right now and adding value at this point in time, taking maximum accountability as much as possible, than thinking of, okay, what's the next title I need to chase. So this was surprising. I could not answer really, saying, okay, if you want to be a CTO, you follow this. I don't have that, let's say, a run book or anything created where I can look at it and then say. But yeah, like you said, even for me, the journey has been that what I have done previously, somebody recognizing and saying, okay,
Yeah.
now this is what I'm offering. Are you interested in moving in that direction, right? Which is the right kind of advice maybe people should be really hearing.
I also tell people one more thing, that don't run behind titles.
Yeah.
You want to become a CTO, I will make you CTO, but you will end up doing the job of a developer, right? I mean, titles are one part, right? I mean, think differently. Don't run just behind titles. See what you want to do, what you want, what makes you happy, right? And where is your strength, or where have weakness, and you want to build on those weaknesses, change that weakness to strength, right? So
Yeah. Okay. And I think that gives us a right segue to move into the next topic, maybe, which is, I don't think titles will be any relevant going in this direction where AI is transitioning in the way that it is right now. I think titles, roles, everything will be sidelined. And even, I don't know, just last week, just 2 weeks back, I was having another podcast with Karthik, who was my ex-boss. We were talking about how AI is going to disrupt in a different way. Even I was explaining, or maybe I was telling him that, okay, we don't have an infrastructure or an ecosystem which is existing. AI is more standalone now. We're solving problem for maybe one area at this point. Let's say for programming, you have one. For another one, you have something else, right? But then just last week, Codex is released.
yes,
And I heard you have some user stories defined. You give it to Codex, run it, go for your coffee break, maybe come back after 5 hours. You can see the Gantt chart created where it will show what is already done. It can fix code if it is buggy. It will say, this is your shitty code, I'm going to fix it. And then this is really happening. Just last week, things are disrupting so fast in this world. I'm wondering where architects are looking at it right now. How are they even visualizing where this is going?